The 70s Horror Review. The Werewolf of Washington. The Werewolf of Washington is the name of a 1973 horror comedy film starring Dean Stockwell of Quantum Leap fans. It was released in cinemas in the United States on the 20th of February 1973. The movie was intended as a satirical parody of recent political events in the United States, most notably Watergate. The film was poorly reviewed and often very, very obscure and difficult to find. It has received a number of VHS and DVD releases, albeit from labels that had, shall we say, a questionable right to actually release it, and almost always in very subpar presentations. Basically, Werewolf of Washington was a film it was extremely difficult to find and all but impossible to find in actual good condition and quality. Until this year, when the much-loved Blu-ray label Kino Lorber, who did such a great job on the Kolchak series, released this film all cleaned up, HD'd and looking beautiful on Blu-ray. In fact, the Blu-ray releases has two cuts of the film, the theatrical version and a director's cut that was actually prepared by the director Milton Mose Ginsburg just before his death in 2021. Now, The Werewolf of Washington is a movie I've been curious about for a while. I love Dean Stockwell, obviously. I was a big fan of Quantum Leap back in the day. Not the modern version, obviously, but the proper version. And I've enjoyed seeing Dean Stockwell in various other things as well over the years. So this was one that I was very interested in seeing, and it kind of sounded like a fun idea as well. Basically, the plot kind of revolves around the new White House press secretary, played by Dean Stockwell, who is bitten by a wolf while overseas. And he comes back home to start his new job in the White House and starts to find things, getting a bit hairy. And the corpses start to pile up around the full moon. It sounded like a fun idea, and it sounded like a movie that I would really like to see. And it was almost impossible to find. I think it was like late last year or earlier this year, I heard that I saw like a listing for it on Blu-ray from Kino Lorber, and I'm like, oh, awesome, fantastic. I will track this down. I went on the website, and I couldn't find any trace of it. It was like there was a thing of like you could rent it out, stream it if you were a college or an educational institution or something like that. And there wasn't even a coming soon thing. And I was like, okay, well, that's real helpful. As it turns out, I don't know why they hadn't got it listed. It was eventually released. I actually found this on YouTube. Clearly a copy taken from a Blu-ray release, albeit the aspect ratio was a bit fiddled with, probably to get around copyright. That being said, that is the version that I watched. And I have to be honest, I've seen some terrible reviews of this, both in print form and even on YouTube. And I thought this was thoroughly entertaining. I found Werewolf of Washington great fun, really entertaining, and often really very funny. I don't know I don't know what precisely what you would want from a movie called Werewolf of Washington that's got White House staff being a werewolf. It's a werewolf movie, and just the premise alone should pretty much tell you it's going to be a bit tongue-in-cheek, and that's exactly what it is, as well as a wonderful early 70s atmosphere and vibe, which I find always irresistible. I'd much rather have an early 70s vibe than a 2023 vibe, but that's just me. I have actually picked up the Blu-ray now. I was so enamored with it when I watched it on YouTube. I'm like, this looks like even though the aspect ratio was a bit fiddled with, I was like, this looks like a HD copy. This looks like a brand new restoration. So, and it was fine. It's been released actually. It's like, okay. The last time I checked, even though I'd heard it was coming, there was no listing at all for it. So I'm like, okay. Excellent. Well, I've picked it up, and I don't regret it. I think Werewolf of Washington is great fun. It's a very silly idea. It's done. It doesn't get too silly, in my opinion. And when it is silly, it's played with that kind of deadpan rather than, running around screaming OTT, haha, isn't this funny? No, it's actually embarrassing. No, it's played in a very kind of deadpan straight sort of way, which just makes it more amusing, obviously. I love the laissez-faire attitude of the White House staff when it all kind of comes out towards the end. It's just one more thing that the public can't find out about, basically. Oh dear, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I found this very, very amusing, and in my opinion, I would recommend it. If you don't want to go out and spend it on the Blu-ray, at least try and find the decent HD copy on YouTube. I found it thoroughly engaging. Dean Stockwell's great in it, looking so young. I give Werewolf of Washington a strong B+. It now sits proudly in my 70s collection.